In this video, we're going to create our tooling split. But first I want to explain a little bit more about how the process is working at this stage. If we hide our solid body and expand our surface bodies folder, you can see that we have a cavity surface and a core surface in addition to the parting surface we just created. If I turn on our cavity surface, this is an exact replica of the outside of our part that has the appropriate draft for the upper section of our pull. So everything in green here is a zero offset surface from the outside of our part. Now you'll also notice that all of the shutoff surfaces that were created are knitted into this body. You don't notice them on the side here because it was a plane or a planar face and everything had a planar fill to it. So everything is a nice smooth fill here. Because we didn't have any tangency with the smaller fills, these are actually showing up as edges. We go back to our surface bodies folder, we're going to hide the cavity and show the core. This is actually the inside. And again, all of those shutoff surfaces we created were knitted into this. Now what SOLIDWORKS is doing at this point is taking the core and our parting surface and using that to subtract from a solid body. And then it's using our cavity and the shutoff surface and using that to subtract from another body. So if we show both of these, this is an accurate representation of the inside and the outside of our part. So I'm going to hide both of those, turn my solid back on, I'm going to create our tooling split. Now SOLIDWORKS wants us to create a sketch that's going to be the shape of the outside of our mold. I'm going to select our parting surface. I'm going to draw a rectangle centered at the origin. It's going to be 4 inches by 7.5. Now the important thing here for what we're doing is that we make sure that this sketch completely encompasses the geometry of our part. So I'm going to OK that sketch, and you'll notice we now get a prompt window that's asking us for our block size. This is basically an extrusion in 2 directions. We got 1.5 inches in the upper direction and 1/2 inch in the lower direction. That's just to make sure that we completely encompass the part. Now the important thing we want to look at here is the core, cavity, and parting surface. The core is that core surface, that inner red surface, that's going to be cutting away from the lower body. The cavity surface is going to be cutting away from the upper body. Now you might be looking at this and say, well, your core is actually not cutting much away from the lower body. Well, that's correct because in this case, it actually needs to add some geometry to it. But keep in mind that this is a solid block right now. It's not split at this parting surface just yet. So when it cuts this geometry, it's actually cutting it from a solid block at the same time. You can do this manually, but SOLIDWORKS makes it very simple for you to create all these operations in one single operation. So we're going to OK, and let's take a look at what we have here. I'm going to hide my parting surface, make sure that my core and cavity surfaces are hidden. I'm going to hide the solid body, that's our geometry, and I'm going to do a section view. Now if we take a look at the section view, you can see that the geometry is cut away. So there is enough room in here to fill with plastic to create the geometry of our part. If we do a section view from the top and drag this up, you can see the same thing is true. Now it's important at this stage that you change the transparency of these parts. This will help you visualize a little bit better what's going on. I'm going to turn back on my original part, so that way we get a little bit better appearance here. That concludes creating our tooling split.